Good morning, dear respected Thai, dear noble community. Today is December 3rd in the year 2017. And we are together in the Loving Kindness Temple of New Hamlet during our winter retreat, 2017 to 2018. And the theme of our winter retreat is the 7 factors of awakening. We just had a chance to practice this deep meditation. And today I am invited to share about the factor of energy, or sometimes effort, sometimes diligence. Our teacher liked to translate it as diligence, to emphasize this energy as something that is not neutral, but is the energy we have to develop virtuous activity, to do good for ourselves and for others. That is a kind of energy which in Sanskrit is called virya. So we've had very inspiring talks already for the winter retreat. Brother Phapu got us started off, and Sister Gina shared about mindfulness as specifically having 4 aspects of awareness of the body, in the body, feelings in the feelings, mind in the mind, and objects of mind, or phenomena in the phenomena. And throughout both the early Buddhist texts and the later, Mahayana texts, we find over and over again this phrase of body in the body, awareness of the body in the body, feelings in the feelings, mind in the mind, and phenomena in phenomena. So it's an invitation for us to practice, not to just have a concept about our body or a concept about our feelings. Like I am someone who enjoys, for example. But what is the experience of a pleasant feeling right now? Maybe you have a warm blanket on you. There's some warmth somewhere. Maybe it's a little bit cold underneath, so there's some unpleasant feeling. But right now we can be aware of the feelings directly in the feelings themselves. We don't need to mediate our awareness with our thinking. And then last week, Sister Insight shared about the second factor of awakening, of investigation. So how can we look deeply into what is going on in the present moment, in our body, in our feelings, in our mind, in all phenomena, so that we can understand when this comes to be, that comes to be. Right? Cause and effect. How can we look deeply into our own body and mind and get an insight into how things arise? It's very interesting. In fact, when you get this insight of investigating your mind, you no longer get bored. Even if the Dhamma talk is really boring, you can always come back to your body, come back to your feeling. That's a feeling of irritation. Or that's a feeling of impatience. And then that insight brings you joy. Because normally we just are ruled by these kinds of emotions. We let them drag us around like a dog on a leash. When we feel irritation, then we need somebody to go complain to. We go look for someone. Until we complain to that person, we will not feel satisfied. That is like a dog on a leash. We are pulling, the irritation is pulling us to act in a conditioned way, a way that we have trained ourselves. And so today we'll look into this aspect of energy and where does it come from? How can we cultivate it? What is its purpose? And I'd like to start with some interesting insights from science, which I shared about a few days ago in the monastic day in a workshop about a little bit about the evolution of our emotions and the insights we've had. Scientific research that's been done around where these emotions come from and why do we have them? What purpose do they serve? Or better, do animals feel like we do? And I share this as a way of understanding how our practice relates to the kind of insights that we are getting through the kind of investigation we call science, right, of understanding the mind, that is coming together with the stream of Buddhist practice over many generations. And I think they are like brothers and sisters. They are coming together and learning from each other, finding new and deeper insights. Yeah. So there's a particular researcher I'm going to share about this morning. So his name is Jacques Panksepp. And he worked for over 40 years. He passed away last spring. But he worked for over 40 years in studying whether animals have feelings. I think if you are here, probably you think already that animals have feelings. Probably you are here in Plum Village because you have a little bit more compassion. And I was quite surprised to find out that for the past almost 200 years, most scientific researchers, they did not believe that animals had feelings. I was very shocked. I said, how could they think like that? Yeah, we can go back to René Descartes, and he said, I think, therefore I am. And so therefore, if apparently animals don't think, so they must not be like human beings are, perhaps. Maybe they're just kind of zombies. And for most of the 20th century, that kind of thinking pervaded scientific research. It's called behavioralism. That if, for example, we know of the famous dog of Pavlov, right? When he heard the ringing sound and they fed him food in a cage, then after many days of training him like that, they found that if they rang the bell, that same ringing noise, and they didn't give him food, he would start to salivate very, very much. So he had been conditioned to, every time the sound of the bell rang, to anticipate eating food. And so the belief was that animals are just conditioned like that. Maybe even human beings. We're all of our emotions and what we feel throughout the day that is perhaps only just conditioning like that. And well, I'm not an expert in scientific history. I'm just sharing my little bit of what I've learned looking into this, because I became very interested last year in this. We'd been studying in the monastic group a little bit about the evolution of the human body. And I had learned things in school, but I wanted to learn more about why is my body like this? Why is it the way it is? How is it that I'm able to speak? How is it that I'm able to run? And then after going into that deeply, then I asked the question of one of my brothers. I said, has anybody ever studied why? How is it that our emotions evolved to be the way they are? Everyone just accepts that it's like that. Has anyone tried looking deeply into why we have anger? Why do we have fear? And then that brother Fablin, he gave me the name of this researcher. So I became very interested in it. So I want to share with you a little bit of the insight, because what they've discovered is that our brain has many layers. Just like when we look for the fossils of an ancient dinosaur, we have to peel back the layers of the stone in the earth to look for the physical remains that have been fossilized in the rock layer. In the same way, we can look at our body and we can actually see that there are layers by comparing the structure of the human body to the structure of our cousin mammals, as well as other reptile, birds, amphibians, fish. We can see that there are structures that are similar and structures that are different, that have evolved perhaps at a later time or in a different way. So I will not go into too much detail because our concern today is mainly about our practice. So I'll ask you just to, if you are more interested in this, to look into it into more detail. But the fruit of this research is that it turns out that both animals, specifically mammals and some birds as well, many birds, but most of the research has been done on mammals, including human beings. We have a set of emotions, or you could say emotional systems, maybe, rather than emotions, that are more ancient than others. They are more fundamental. They stimulate very deep and early parts of our brain, very close to our brainstem, like the hypothalamus, the medial thalamus. And they operate in certain patterned ways, so we can recognize them if they're happening in human beings, if they're happening in animals. We can know what emotional system is being triggered. And the important point to know is that these systems, as far as we can tell, are not learned. The animals are born. We are born, as well as other mammals and some birds and perhaps some other animals, are born with these emotional systems already intact from the moment they come out of the womb. Yeah. And it's important. One thing I will write these. There's at least 7 of them, and then I want to share about go into it in terms of our practice, in relating these 7 factors of awakening, and especially the factor of energy, to these insights we've gotten from science. So please remember that our conditioned way to respond to these words may not describe exactly what these emotional systems are. We need to remember that they are, because we have MRI machines, as well as other ways of seeing the activity of the brain. These are describing particular brain functions. So sometimes I think of them all as emotions is not exactly right. So they're more like emotional systems that are triggered by certain phenomena. And in order to kind of emphasize that these are not the emotions exactly that we are used to seeing, then we usually write them all in uppercase to distinguish them from the normal word. So the first one is called seeking. And one of the monastics commented that that's not an emotion. Actually, we are in the seeking mode quite often. Probably right now, that is what is being stimulated in you. When you are attending a lecture, or maybe you go into the library and you walk around and you look at the different books. Or I think my favorite one, to think about the emotion that we have, the emotional system of seeking, that when that is most commonly triggered is when we go shopping. Anyone ever feel that? Like, I feel like I want to go shopping. No one? Come on. We have these shopping malls, Leclerc, and you walk around. And we had a rat coming in our room in Shunha, and just the other day we we caught the rat. But so I would always hear it sometimes in the middle of the night, it coming in and practicing this seeking emotional system, kind of. It's when we see, we're kind of like going around, we're looking, what's over there? What does that smell like? What does that look like? Yeah. Actually, there's a specific pattern in the brain which is firing, whether it's in human beings and mammals, when this seeking system is triggered. So it inspires us to be inquisitive. You could say persistent, exploratory inquisitiveness. Persistent, exploratory inquisitiveness, curiosity. This is like investigation of phenomena. When we cultivate that factor of awakening, we trigger that. We find ways to actually trigger that system. But rather than looking outward, we look in. Yeah. This is what inspires us to approach and engage with the world. It's what gets us out there, like, oh, I want to go out, I want to look around, I want to see what's going on. I like to, when I was a kid, explore the forest around my house. And I'd always like to go and try to find those areas of the forest that I'd never been to before. Sometimes I would lay in bed at night and it was like the landscape of the forest was part of my mind, kind of geography of the mind. And then I would suddenly realize there's a whole area that I didn't know yet. So the next time I went out into the forest, I would go to explore that part of the forest. What's there? What rocks are there? What trees? Maybe there's a cool cliff, somewhere I can hide, I can play. See? So that is the seeking. So there's an element of expectation. It's important to know that it doesn't mean that we have an object in mind. We could be hungry, we could be thirsty, we could have to go to poo or pee. We could maybe be cold and we're looking for warmth. Maybe we're too hot and we're looking to cool down. Those are all different objects that can be what we're expecting in the seeking, but the actual seeking behavior doesn't need to have an object. It is just a function of the mind. You can put an object there, but it doesn't require one. So that's an interesting point to come back to. So seeking, fear. So we have a system of fear. And that system of fear is what triggers us to flee. Or an animal to flee. Like if you see a deer, and then you make a move, and then starts jumping off, right? That is a fear system. This is not theoretical. This is you can see it happening. And so there's an innate, inborn system that triggers us to run away from danger, right? From something we perceive to be dangerous. And in all of these, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's actually very basic. We add many things to that. There are many complexities. Like going shopping is a complexity on top of seeking. It's a certain kind, it's using the seeking system in order to do something in particular. But right now we're just looking at the very basic thing. So fear generates a negative affective state or feeling from which all people and animals wish to escape. That is fear. And we'll see, of course, that sometimes fear is triggered, we want to escape, and then we make use of the seeking system as well, perhaps in order to find a refuge, to find somewhere to hide from the danger. And so it's not just that only one is triggered at one time. These are not mutually exclusive. They are all just basic. They're inborn. The next is rage. Which can lead to emotions like anger. But here we're talking about something even more basic than a developed anger around some particular thing that's irritating us. It is literally what causes animals to propel their bodies, it means throw their bodies toward an offending object. So it is like I like to think of like a cornered rat or a badger that is, there's maybe fear system that is triggered, which then leads to triggering this rage, which is to try to save its life, to throw the body towards the offending objects. It's fundamentally a negative affect. So animals always try to get away from having this emotional system. The same for fear. So there are certain systems where animals, every time, they will try to get out of that system. They don't enjoy it. They try to find any way to make it stop. One of them is fear, and rage is another one. They find it very unpleasant, apparently, right? They try to do everything to try to stop it. And so this rage is what, it's like, it makes us want to just lash out to try to stop whatever thing is trying to threaten us. So fear is fleeing, running away. Rage is lashing out, actually going towards something that is potentially dangerous. The next is lust. So, lust, exhibiting abundant courting activities, and eventually move toward an urgent joining of their bodies with a receptive mate. That's pretty clear. So sometimes I see, I think these courting activities, sometimes we are not aware. We come together for a day of mindfulness and then you go to the tea area and you're like, wow, what's going on here? Some of the guys are starting to show their colors. We joke about it a little bit in the Brothers Hamlet, but this is very natural, right? It is the tendency to want to kind of like I was when I was presenting this to the monastics, I had a little video of the birds of paradise in Guinea. I don't know if you've ever seen these birds with very unusual bright colors and strange forms when they are courting the female. And you just see them putting on, it just seems a massive effort to try to impress the female. And then even when they do it sometimes, she's not impressed and she goes off. So sometimes I see that on days of mindfulness in Plum Village. Of course not with the monastics. So this is very, this is built in. And why is it built in? Well, that's why we're here. We wouldn't be here if this was not a built-in, innate tendency. So we have to look at it honestly as human beings. Because our mother and our father have this tendency, that is why we are here. And their mother and father and their mother and father. So it has been somehow successful over many, many generations. If it was not successful in its intended activity, then we would not be here. So animals are born, they do not be, they of course all of these systems may be conditioned later on. There can be many, and there are many kinds of learned behaviors that happen afterward when we were born, but they are, as far as we can tell, these things are already there when we're born. Of course in mammals they manifest, in most animals they manifest at a later time. Right, they not necessarily until 12 or 13 for human beings, I think, until adolescence. The next one is care. So a nurturing activity. The impulse to envelop loved ones with gentle caresses and tender ministrations. It means tender gestures, tender actions. So this is the action of the mother caring for her newborn children. It is also the action of the children towards the mother. That warm, gentle, in mammals this has become very important because we are born not fully developed. We're not ready to go out sometimes and face the world, especially human beings. We take a long time to mature so we can take care of ourselves. So that's why we have the children's program in Plum Village. And so we are fortunate that mothers have inbuilt in them this caring system. They don't have to learn it. Many mothers are quite surprised. My sister also was quite surprised at the way she changed when she gave birth. Suddenly this whole system just comes in. You realize it's fully formed. Without any training, a woman starts to have certain feelings and emotions towards their children, as well as a father can as well, of caring, of nurturing,
So, of course, biologically in the woman, this also stimulates milk production and other hormones. Panic. So the next one is sometimes we can call panic or grief. And this is another one that animals want to become free of as quickly as possible. Another way of describing it is separation distress. This is the source of most of our stress, this system. It is the little baby chick crying because it can't find its mother. It is looking for that someone who is manifesting care. Specifically, usually the mother, but it could be the father or a friend. It's when we feel. This is what is triggered when we feel chronically lonely. It is the sense of separation from a loved one. The Buddha would say separation from those who we love as one of the major causes of suffering. And it's amazing how similar across different mammals the sound of the cry is. We have cats in Shunha, and I'm always wondering, how did they get the tone so right? It just touches you in this deep place when they start meow. And you're like, how did they condition, somehow they grew up this capacity. Because I've heard a cheetah make a similar noise, and it doesn't arouse the same feelings of caring, like it doesn't make the caring. I'm a little bit scared, and it sounds like But the cats, they somehow developed that capacity, probably because the cats that could reproduce a sound that touches our caring capacity, they didn't survive. They didn't get food. So the cats we have today are the ones that got the right tone. they knew how to get our attention. It touched that same thing that a baby crying, very similar, the sound of a baby crying. There's somebody suffering and I need to help it. So that plays a very real role, but in the cycle of loneliness and depression, it has been overstimulated. So we are constantly feeding ourselves with a kind of distress. And that is coming from our cortex. We're not talking so much about the higher parts of the brain, the more newly arrived parts, our neocortex. This is the very, very early basic stuff. That is usually what we do to mediate and control the manifestation of these early systems. And that is also how our practice helps us to deal with these things when they're triggered. How to deal with this separation distress, this panic and grief of separation that causes us to cry out. And sometimes there's crying out, but usually in the community we don't hear that so much. It's a little bit like a lower volume version of the cry, which is complaining. Usually if you're complaining, ask yourself, am I suffering from separation distress? Kind of panic, grief. You say the community is supposed to be like this, and why is it not like that? And I feel like that kind of thing. Why did she treat me like that? Most of our drama and our trauma comes from this one. He describes it as a deep psychological wound. An internal psychological experience of pain that has no obvious physical cause. So it's based on our attachment. There's some kind of need for caring that we have become conditioned to expect. and we feel separated. So when somebody has a party and we're not invited, that's what gets triggered. Why were we not invited? Why did nobody invite me to that meeting? Don't they know that I have important things to share? So that is what is triggered. And so that kind of thinking is sourced in this early emotional system of panic, grief. And the last one is play. I say last one, but there could be more. This is what has been found so far, very distinctively, as patterns of firing neurons in the ancient brain. We know how to play right from the moment we're born. Isn't that wonderful? But sometimes we lose the capacity to play because we should be doing something more serious, right? So all mammals have this capacity to play, and it's not just. I'm not talking just about cooperative games, right? It's a play. Playing is also involves a form of domination. So you'll see if dogs are playing with each other, one will be on top, and the other then plays the role of being on bottom, and then later usually they switch. And that is a part of play too, is this switching. So it's this kind of rough and tumble way of learning skills. So you could see it as also a more kind of engaged or active form of seeking, because they're actually honing certain skills. By doing this play actually helps them to learn to interact with their environment, and especially social interactions. So to interact with the other puppies. And if one animal is always dominating and the other one is always passive, then the one that is underneath, that is being dominated, will stop playing. It's not fun anymore. Did you ever feel like that? Sometimes when I play chess, I feel like that. It's not fun anymore. I don't want to play this game anymore. So the important part of the play, right, is switching. Sometimes one wins, sometimes the other wins. So in the monastic community, Thai has reintroduced this aspect because it was lost for many years. I think the Buddha enjoyed playing. There's an early text story of the Buddha's life, which is called Lalita Vistara, the full play, you could say. And it is actually a story of the Buddha's life as a kind of play. Not a play like a theater, but that the Buddha came in some Mahayana teachings, the Buddha just came down for fun to get enlightenment, just to help out everyone else, all the human beings. He said, well, he was inspired and he was invited to come down into the womb and then live through life and suffer and so forth and get enlightenment as a kind of play. So they call it the full play. Actually, that when we touch that aspect in our practice, it's very helpful because we can be too serious sometimes. I have been way too serious sometimes about my practice. And then we lose this aspect of play, that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you're very concentrated, sometimes you're very dispersed. It's okay. That's part of the play. We don't understand concentration if we don't experience being dispersed, right? So, viva la dispersion. Right? It's a way of understanding what it means to be, like Thai says, we don't enjoy our non-toothache most of the time. But when we have a toothache, then we really appreciate our non-toothache, the joy of not having a toothache. And so it's similar. Yeah, we sometimes get lost in our thinking. It's okay. Just enjoy it. Be aware, I'm lost in my thinking. As a kind of play. in your own mind. Okay, so I just present these emotional systems. So these are the 7 that have been found in the ancient part of our brain. So how does this relate to our practice? And specifically the practice of the factors of enlightenment. So let's see if we can investigate and find out. We can listen to the sound of the bell. We've been learning about the 7 factors of enlightenment as a progression. We can also look at it as interrelated capacities. So we have mindfulness, investigation, energy or diligence, leads to joy, calm, tranquility, I'm going to run out of space. Concentration, and equanimity. Or sometimes we say inclusiveness. We include everything. No discrimination. So we've been talking about them as mindfulness, helping us to investigate, which gives us energy. When we look deeply into things, we get energy. That's an insight. Usually we are wasting our energy One of the things I loved about Thai and his way of teaching was that I never felt like there was a show. I remember somebody once saying about a Zen master, no matter which direction you come at him, from behind, in front, above, below, at any time, you always get a teaching. And that was, I think, many of our experiences of being with Thai. Because Thai was, I always thought Thai is like the most efficient living being I've ever met. He's always using his energy to cultivate virtuous action of the mind, of speech, of the body. So all you have to do is just pay attention to what he's doing. When we went back to Vietnam in 2005, when Thai came back for the first time, and it was quite hectic, and we were packed into buses and moved around, and everybody got sick and diarrhea, and it was woo. We were in Hanoi, and there was secret police everywhere. And I remember one of my elder brothers, I was in the room with him, and I, was asking him, having a conversation about how to practice during this very complicated tour. I'd only been a monk for a little bit more than a year. And he said, just watch Thai. Just watch Thai. Watch what Thai is doing. And so that's what I did for 3 months. I just watched Thai. What is Thai doing? Thai did that? Okay, that's what we do. And it really works. And it's amazing how much, that helped me to save my energy and also keep me from getting sick. Not to waste my time, my mental energy with other things. Not to say that I didn't do that, but when I was practicing well, I was just watching Thai, following Thai, and seeing what Thai was doing. So that is why Thai like to use the word diligence. I like putting energy up there too, because sometimes diligence, maybe it doesn't express how much energy, how much potential is there latent in us. It is huge. When we start cultivating virtuous action that brings benefit to ourselves and others, we unleash this latent battery within each one of us. And you suddenly have lots of energy to do lots of things. The problem was that you didn't have enough energy. Many people, they go to the doctor, and why am I always so tired? Why am I? It's there. It's there in you. When we start doing acts of kindness to ourselves first. I remember the teaching of one master, and he had a question from, I think it was Ajahn Chah. He had a question from someone in America, and he said, I just can't, I don't know why, but I try to give things to people, and when I get to that moment, I just can't give something to someone. I feel, no, I need it for myself. Yeah. And so he saw this poor man suffering, and then he said, I have an idea. Okay? You can take an apple in your hand, in one hand, and then you can practice giving it to your other hand. And then when you've been able to do that, then the other hand you can practice giving it back to the other hand, the first hand. And that's how you start to practice giving. I love that story. I actually tried it one time. So, oh wow, okay, yeah, get used to that. All right. Oh, okay. So when we are doing things that bring about positive change in others, bring about awakening in ourselves and others, then we get a lot of energy. We reveal the source of a lot of energy. So that's why this investigation actually is a source of energy. Because you start to see, it's like this morning through the fog, you go through and you start to see, and then it opens up and it becomes more clear. You see the path. You see more surely where you can take the next step and the next step. But when we are doing things that are hurtful to ourselves and hurtful to others, when we are hateful towards ourselves and hateful towards others, then we have a lot of fog. And then we just feel overwhelmed all the time. We burn out. We don't know what to do or where to go. This is my experience. The more that I practice being kind to myself and kind to others, then energy manifests. And then energy leading to joy, and that brings a lot of joy. When you get energy, you feel a lot of joy right away. Because you're seeing things as they are, not as you imagine them to be. And you're not caught in an idea about yourself, about others. You see things are impermanent. This body is dying right now. It's also being born right now. Last night when we were doing walking meditation in Shunha, I was just practicing to put as little energy as possible in my walking. And just as much of my energy into just the awareness of the walking. I don't need to make a big effort to walk. And then I became very aware of my body is decaying right now. It is changing, it is moving, it is, developing. Things are happening. I don't know if I'm going to still be alive when I get back to my cushion. Who knows what can happen? Yeah. And that really allows me to unleash a lot of energy, and then with that energy, my body just fills with joy. It's very interesting. In the sutras, the early Buddhist texts, there are a few incidences where these 7 factors of awakening are used to help cure a monk of sickness. It seems to be the Buddha's main medicine for illness. So one time there's the Buddha offered as the 7 factors of enlightenment or awakening to Mahakasyapa when he was ill. And the report is that by the end of giving that guided meditation to Mahakasyapa, he had overcome his illness. He was no longer ill. And not only Mahakasyapa, but the Buddha himself one time got very sick. And so he asked one of his monks, Mahachunda, please give the teaching on the 7 factors of awakening. And then just listening to the monk, Mahachunda, give the teaching to the Buddha. So the Buddha could recall these 7 factors of awakening, and then the Buddha was able to overcome his illness. I always remember that when I am feeling a little bit down or somehow a bit. These 7 factors of awakening have been very important for me to really overcome. We know now that illness is not only a physical matter. It's always related to our mind. Yeah. And when our body feels joy, in particular, I feel that brings health. The joy, the sensation of joy is actually is not unrelated to our immune system. When we feel joy, our body gets healthier. We give the best kind of medicine to our body in a way that maybe any kind of drug or vitamin would not be able to give it. That is why we have this panacea, placebo effect. Many of you, have you heard of the placebo effect? Placebo, yeah. When they do scientific studies, they discovered very early on, they always have to have a control group. That means a group that doesn't receive any treatment. And then of whatever they're studying, right? It might be some medication. Even though that group doesn't receive the medication, but some of them get better. They believe that they're getting the treatment. but they're not actually getting anything. And just because they believe they're getting treated and they're being cared for, they actually get better. So it's been seen, I don't know, tens of thousands of times. It's a standard part of scientific research in medicine. The placebo effect. So when we feel that caring energy, that system of care generated, compassion of someone towards us, then we heal. When we generate joy for ourselves, it means we care enough about ourselves. We allow that caring system to manifest. I see that in my own mind, many times I don't care enough about myself to allow myself to be joyful. That can be the biggest obstacle to feeling joy. We feel we're not worthy, we feel we're not good enough. Why should we feel joy? And we become ill. We start to become a burden for our friends, a burden for our family, a burden for ourselves. So this going in and taking care of ourselves, arousing energy to do kindness to ourselves and others, it brings a joy. I don't want to go too much into joy because that's for next week. Joy leading to tranquility. When we feel joyful, then our body feels at ease, which makes it easy to maintain our awareness over time. We have the practice of following our breath to cultivate concentration, right? We following the in-breath all the way through, following the out-breath all the way through. We don't get lost in our thinking. So by doing a small guided meditation for yourself, before you practice mindfulness of breathing, you actually get more concentration, and you find that it's much easier to follow your breath without getting distracted. Because we are usually distracted because we feel like our body is not a happy place to be. So we want to be somewhere else. So we don't really go anywhere else, but we just, in our thinking, we go into outer space. Or we go into the past or the future. Because something here is not at ease. So it's very difficult to concentrate. So we see built into all of these factors is a compassion, deep compassion. It's not mentioned there explicitly. But by offering and developing these factors of enlightenment for ourselves, we actually are compassionate towards ourselves. We're developing a kind of self-compassion, taking care of our body and our mind, healing our body and our mind. And then equanimity. So it means even the unpleasant stuff, we allow it to be there. We don't try to push it away. In this way, you become at ease in any situation. Wherever you go, there you are. You're home. Home wherever you are. That is a keystone practice of Plum Village. And these 7 factors are, for me, one of the best ways to develop I have arrived, I am home, in the here and the now. Or what we like to call dwelling happily in the present moment. So wherever we go, happiness is there. Most of the time we are only afraid of our own emotions. We're not afraid of going to, Africa, or afraid of going to see our boss. We're afraid of our emotion. We're afraid of the systems which get triggered when we are near that person. And that is only happening because of our perceptions. We have actually complete capacity to be able to not trigger our fear, not trigger our rage. That is one of the great things that we are offered as practitioners. That is what our neocortex, where it's helping us out. A lot of times it's not necessarily helping us out. A lot of our thinking is actually not very necessary. And it's just, it has this great capacity to plan into the future, to see all the different things, like when you want to plan your vacation, which is more exhausting than your daily life, where you're going to have lots of rest, and then you spend weeks ahead of time planning where you're going to fly, how you're going to fly, where you're going to stay, where you're going to rent the car, where all the beautiful places are that you're going to see. But what if instead, right now, we took a vacation in our mind and developed mindfulness, developed investigation of phenomena and energy, joy, tranquility. I like this vacation. That's why I live here. Because I feel like here in Plum Village, this is what I have time to do. Nobody's asking me to do anything. Maybe I just do some washing up. But when I'm washing up, I can do it in mindfulness. This morning, I'm on the washing up team. So I got to wash up after breakfast. And the brother said, "Oh, no, you're giving a Dhamma talk. Why don't you go rest and prepare?" I said, "I am preparing." This is Plum Village. I'm not living in some elite monastery where I just sit on the mountain and drink tea and then come down from time to time and give a Dhamma talk. No, I wipe the peanut butter off of the table after breakfast. And then when we get out to the car, it won't start. How many of you had cars that didn't start? Wow, I think the brothers have not very high quality cars. My brother came over the other day to New Hamlet, and not on the day of mindfulness, he said, "Wow, the cars in New Hamlet are so beautiful. They're all new and shiny." Sorry. Old cars are beautiful too. That's equanimity. So we were out there, and I was thinking, oh wow, that would be very interesting if I can't get to New Hamlet. So who will give the Dhamma talk? I think Sister Shinnim. She can take my place. So we were scraping the ice off of the windshield. We were getting the other car so we can and then getting the jumper cables to be able to jump the car so that we can get it started to come here to New Hamlet. And so all those things are like activities which we can do with joy. Because what good is it if I get stressed out about the fact that the car doesn't get started? Then I come to New Hamlet and I'm stressed out, and then I offer my stress to everybody and you all suffer. Right? So here in Plum Village, we are here to do this, to wake up. We're not here just to wash the plates or start the cars or get caught in our projects. And sometimes we forget that. Even the projects that Thai specifically told us to do. Because what is the use of doing that project if we are not joyful? If we are not free in doing it? If we stay up late nights and we get stressed out. Recently I was working on a book for teachers, and I got a lot of stress. I had to stay up late and writing this, and then I think, gosh, how did I end up here? I'm here in the monastery to develop factors of awakening. And I want to offer that joy and happiness to others, and here I am sitting suffering behind the computer. So I have to look deeply into my life, because I know that what Thai wants for me is for me to wake up, to be free from this stress. And so that is still an area of my life where I'm looking deeply. What is it that drives me? What kind of things are driving me to continue to go in this cycle of suffering and not enjoy this awakening in every moment? Because that's what's here on offer in Plum Village. It's here for us. You can spend all your time being mindful. Can you imagine? I mean, where else can you do that? I don't know. I mean, I haven't found anywhere else. Actually, everything is designed for me to be aware of my step, aware of my breath, aware of my body, aware of my suffering, to embrace my suffering, to take care of it. It's all there just for that. And all the rest of this is just play. Washing the plates, finding a way, a legal way in France for the interns to stay here long term. It's all just play. That's not what's really important. And that's what we want to transmit to each other. That's the kind of collective awakening that's Thai's deepest dream. So that is the real project, underneath all the little side projects. That is the real project. And I'm really curious about this one. This is the one I'm this past year, I'm looking in, I have a big spotlight. I'm like, this collective awakening, how do you bring it about? Really, I'm not talking about just some nice concept we can all talk about, collective awakening. But how do you really, together as a community, how do we wake up? I don't know. I mean, I'm working on it. I'm working on taking care of my own emotions. I'm working on supporting my brothers and sisters around me to do it. I'm developing these factors of enlightenment so I feel lighter in my body and my mind, so I don't feel caught in my stress, my worry. And slowly, like a flower unfolding and blooming, it begins to show its beauty of awakening in the Sangha body. But the interesting thing is that you can't make people wake up. You can only do it yourselves. And that is actually the beauty of the Buddha's teaching. No one can save you. How many of you saw the film Walk With Me? Anyone? Okay, yeah. There was we did a wake-up tour in the US that's in the film that was recently made, and while we were doing a sitting meditation in Union Square in New York, there was a preacher on the street. And when he saw us come and sit down and do a flash mob meditation, he started to say like, "The Buddha can't save you. Muhammad can't save you." And I thought, you're right. Actually, you're right. Buddha can't save me. Only I can bring about what is necessary for awakening to happen. It has to start here. There's no external force who can do it for me. So we have to touch our deep aspiration. I try to get in touch with it every day when I wake up. Why am I here in Plum Village? Why am I offered all of these wonderful conditions? So I can practice waking up to myself, to my brothers, in my way of speaking, thinking, acting. Not causing harm. Maybe we don't see what is kindness. If you have trouble understanding what is kindness, then maybe think about non-harming. The Buddha offered that teaching, Ahimsa. If I can't yet see how to be kind, well, I can at least practice not to harm myself, not to harm those dear to me. And then when you practice that, you start to see what is kindness. And you see that as I see that as my deep aspiration. I want to live that kind of life here. I want to find a way to have it go deeply into my brothers and sisters as well, and how to extend it out. How can we I'm always asking, I remember Tai saying, how can we have more people come for the summer retreat? And all the monastics go, more awakening, oh my gosh, more people to wake up. How are we going to deal with them and their suffering? Yeah, but we are here for that. That is our deep task. When you look deeply, you see that this this deep energy of awakening is in you. This deep aspiration to wake up. And everyone can do it. Don't ever give up. You may never learn how to jumpstart a car. You may never learn how to bake an amazing vegan eggplant parmesan. Thank you, Andrea. Where are you? Yesterday in Shunha. I know that I might never be able to make an eggplant vegan parmesan like that. But I know I can wake up. I'm certain. And I know that only I can decide to do that. So that is why Tai gave us a teaching in a monastic day of mindfulness one time. It's a teaching of %. So Tai had this attendance print on a card, 100%. And then Tai walked around the meditation hall in Lower Hamlet, and he gave out the card to every brother and sister. Like that. It took maybe, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Tai just slowly walked around. Tai didn't give any teaching. He just gave a card. I don't have any cards. I'm not as prepared as Tai. Tai deeply, he knows we can do it. And he finds some skillful way to inspire us. Give it 100%. Give it all your energy. There is a path. There is a path. We are creating a kind of Dhamma culture. Here, a culture of the Dhamma. There is a French culture, there is a German culture. We've been obsessed in the 20th century with nationalist cultures. We've had the religious cultures, but for me the Dhamma culture is not a religious culture. It encompasses all things. It is not confined to just one realm. And this culture of the Dhamma is what we are learning to develop here. We have a lot of insights from the Buddha, in the Buddha's time. But we are also learning how can we do it right here and right now where we find ourselves. How can we touch the Dhamma deeply in our lives? Touch impermanence, touch interbeing, touch collective awakening as a kind of culture. What if that was built into our culture, a culture of awakening? Not a culture of economic utility. A culture of awakening. So these factors of enlightenment are leading to a kind of culture of awakening. And when we are in a community like that, when we are surrounded by people like that, then we get the energy we need. We can get energy from what inspires us from outside. When we see a brother walking with each step in mindfulness, aware of his body, that is a source of energy that inspires us in our practice. And as we go deeper into these factors, we start to see that mindfulness is a source of joy also, directly. Being aware of our breath is a source of joy. Investigation is a source of joy. We see that energy gives us more concentration directly. When we are calm, we can more clearly see what's going on. We know the teaching of still water, our mind being like the water, seeing what is real and what is true. So we start to see that this is not just a one-way process. When we have inclusiveness, we get a lot of energy. That freedom of equanimity gives us more energy. So these are not only just in this direction, but they're actually contributing concentration to investigation. How can we really understand things unless we're able to follow through? See the cause to the effect to the cause to the effect, which becomes a cause, which becomes an effect. You see the relatedness of things. That takes concentration. So, and we can do in every direction. We start to see that these mindfulness leads to concentration. Concentration leads to mindfulness. Tranquility unleashes energy. Joy leads to concentration. So these become a whole circle of awakening, interrelated and supporting one another. And so it's like we see jewels in every direction. When we look over there, we see mindfulness. When we look over there, we see concentration. We look back there, there's joy. Peace, tranquility. So, just like in Plum Village, I invite you in this coming week, when you look around, see these qualities in each other. Recognize someone who, for you, really practices deeply mindfulness, or even just a little bit. And when you see them, let them be a reminder of the factor of mindfulness. See someone who, for you, is calm, tranquil, peaceful. And when you see them, allow that to touch the seed of tranquility in your mind. So that everywhere around us, there are like an interconnected network of jewels reflecting back on our own practice. This is a way of practicing, of having no outside and no inside, separated from each other. What is outside is only supporting us in our inner practice. And that way, it builds our energy, inspires us more. I know that we learned from Brother Folio on Thursday already about the specific practice of right diligence, right? How we invite the negative mental formations to go down, and those negative mental formations which have not yet manifested, how not to have them come up, and then how to stimulate the positive mental formations, as well as how to keep them around in the mind consciousness for a long time. So I didn't want to go into too much detail today, because I think you had a wonderful teaching from him already. That is also a way of cultivating energy, right? Of applying our energy as well to watering the seeds, the positive seeds in our consciousness, and inviting the negative ones to go down. But I see it's 11:30, so I just finish here, coming back to our these emotional systems that we started with. So I'd like to invite you to be aware and see, is this happening in me? Can I recognize when I'm seeking? Can I recognize when I have fear and I want to run away? And then what do I do with that fear? Right? So the Cortex invites us to be mindful of that fear. Just to shine the light of awareness on it. Come to understand it, investigate it. See what's going on. What does it feel like in your body? that sensation of wanting to run away. Like, how many of you had nightmares when you were young and you were running away from something behind you? Anyone? Oh, only half, less than half. My gosh, I thought everybody had those. I had a staircase in my house when I was growing up, and the light switch was at the bottom of the staircase, and the basement was down there. So whenever I shut off that light switch, I found myself in the dark, having to come up the stairs. And so I would always have these dreams when I was a kid of like this terrible man that lived down in the cave of the basement, and he was coming out after me when I would shut off the light, and then I would run up the stairs. That was the fear, the darkness. I don't know what is there. There's some hidden threat conjured by my mind, which triggers a fear system. But as I became more mature, I felt embarrassed that I had such a fear like that. I was a boy, I shouldn't be scared of things like that. That was my way of thinking at that time. But now I look at it more, I embrace the fear. So I practice, for example, sometimes I like to go into the forest in the dark, alone, and just walk without any light. We have a forest between Shunha and Upper Hamlet, and I love to, in the nights without the moon, just to walk through the forest in the dark, just listening to the sounds. I can't even see where I'm putting my feet. And in the past I have fear. Now not so much, but in the past I had fear, that fear system. And then if I hear some strange sound, and right away my brain is panicking, trying to identify, what is that sound? What kind of animal? How big is it? And when I first came to Plum Village, I didn't know that the deer bark. And I think, what is that animal? It's barking. It's running away from me, and I want to run away from it. We're both afraid of each other. Usually that's the case in the forest. We're both scared of each other. So bring awareness to these moments. This one we really need to look into. So many of our relationships are burned because of this system being stimulated, this rage. We want to lash out, even at those who are most dear to us, because they're taking away their care. We fear that the care that they offer us will disappear. And so our anger knows no bounds. We get in a rage. And how we can stimulate more this caring aspect for ourselves, for others. I'm learning more how to take care. Being a mentor and having to do classes for the young monastics, I'm learning a lot about this. Because, anyway, I have to develop a little bit more the side of my mother. That's what I see in myself. Because I developed a lot the side of my father. And my father likes the playing aspect and the seeking, but also the rage. But my mom, more the caring. And so I see, how can I touch that seed, that quality of my mom in me to make it stronger? And with these, developing these factors, it becomes more easy. Because I see, when care is manifesting, I see how to nourish that care. I hope in the coming talks we will go into the 4 kinds of nutriments. I think it's a very powerful and deep teaching, and I encourage you to study it. I'm sure maybe next week or the week after we will go into how we actually can nourish cultivate our mind and these factors by our way of applying our attention, where we put our attention. A kind of source of nutriment for our practice. And this is the big one in our society today. In Japan, there are men who are living alone for many years. When they die, Nobody even knows that they've passed away until the neighbor smells the rotting body, corpse. So many people around the world are so lonely right now, and we have a community here. We're living together, supporting one another. Yeah. And I'm very aware of that suffering that's going on. I just came back from the US, and I know that there are young men and young women that are all over. They are taking pharmaceuticals, opioids. Many people, they have no hope. They don't see any kind of awakening as being possible. They don't have a kind friend like Tai to show them that waking up is possible and to hold their hand. So we need more bodhisattvas. We need more awakened practitioners to hold their hands, because there are so many lonely people. The system of panic and grief has overwhelmed them. And that is what we are here to do. That is also part of our deep aspiration. That is the practice of collective awakening. There's so much work to do, but we do it with joy. And we do it as a Sangha. So thank you for supporting this talk, for being a wonderful Sangha, very rarely met in this world. I'm so grateful for your presence.